One of the top case trends of 2016 has yet to shatter halfway into this year, so why stop at 1 or 2 tempered glass panels when 4 is clearly the way to go? I can almost promise you the Corsair Crystal 570X RGB mid-tower case will steal the spotlight from anything else on your desk. This glossy monolith stands 480mm tall, 234mm wide, and 512mm deep, weighing in at 10.9 kilograms. That is one fat glass. Getting straight to the good stuff this time, we see 4 slightly tinted tempered glass panels, one on top, one in front, and one on each side, all held together by thumb screws of various lengths and a robust steel frame. The glass's corners are rounded at the top and angled at the bottom so you don't get the orientation confused, and they appear somewhat separated from the main chassis, giving a kind of floating appearance. Hope you're not feeling inadequate, because this case hides nothing. Except for the power supply. Kind of. We've got mini ITX, micro ATX, and ATX motherboard support, 7 expansion slots, support for CPU coolers up to 170mm tall, GPUs up to 370mm in length, and on the other side, we see toolless drive brackets for 2 SSDs and 2 hard drives, as well as a sleek cable channel and an incredibly generous cutout for easy cooler mounting. We have lovely magnetic dust filters on all appropriate intakes, illuminated Corsair branding on the bottom of the case face, as well as the power supply shroud, and the top I/O consists of 2 USB 3.0 ports, headphone and microphone jacks, buttons for controlling fan lighting, and the power button. Regarding the fans, the case comes with 3 Corsair SP120 RGB fans pre-installed in the front. This is cool, because 3 of these fans and a controller take up about $63 out of the $180 price tag. There's also a controller inside of the case, but this is kind of silly since you'd have to open the case in order to access it, and you have the same functionality available right on top anyway. Speaking of fans, the case supports 3 120s in the front, or 2 140s with a removable bracket for easy installation, 2 120s or 2 140s up top, also with a removable bracket, and 1 120 around the back. The front supports 120, 240, 280, or 360mm radiators, the rear exhaust supports a 120, and the top officially supports a 240 rad. I say officially because that's what Corsair's site says, but no one tells me what to do. While the top bracket does have the mounting holes for a radiator, you'll notice that a rad with fans will most likely give you clearance issues with either your RAM or motherboard heatsinks. After spiraling into a black hole of self-loathing when I found out my intended configuration wouldn't work, I pondered for about 30 seconds and discovered that I could use part of the bracket and part of the chassis itself to mount my radiator. Cool. What's not so cool is that this pretty much means the bracket is useless for its original purpose, and you'll have no wiggle room for horizontal movement. Your radiator will also be slightly tilted, but to be honest with you, I don't even notice. I'd also like to note that this will not work for all radiators. While I could get my Corsair H110i to line up, the Kraken X62 just wouldn't have it. You gotta be squidding me. And while we're on the hot topic of cooling, let's turn up the heat and smoke some crystal. Test system will be a little different this time around. I'll be using the Xeon E5 2690 V3 processor at 1.3 volts with the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 3 cooler, the GTX 980 Ti Amp Extreme from Zotac, and 6 SP120 RGB fans, 3 intaking the front and 3 exhausting the back and top. And while cooling is a bit over the top, I don't expect any less if you're going for a premium case like this. Granted, most of you don't have or need a Xeon. I'm using it because my other processor is currently preoccupied, and I'd prefer to do case testing with air coolers. It's quicker for the temperatures to stabilize, and all we really want to see is the difference between unrestricted airflow and your standard use case. Case. With the front panel and dust filter off, we see average load temperatures on the CPU and GPU hit 70.5 and 62 at an ambient temperature of 26.3 degrees Celsius. Slapping the case back together in its full tempered glass glory, at an ambient temperature of 26.1, we see an average of 72 degrees Celsius across all CPU cores, while the GPU sat around 62. Given the design of the chassis, almost simulating a kind of open-air case, it's no surprise that the thermals are barely affected. At the same time, it's a bit of a glass cannon. Thermal performance packs a punch, but it lacks the structural fortitude for noise dampening. And I guess now is a good time to talk about the things that shatter my heart of glass. I have to be transparent with you. Little things first, the way the drives have to be oriented, in conjunction with the glass, you're seeing the drive's worst side. And while we're on about the drives, the toolless brackets have to be flexed to get it inserted. No matter how much I flex, I can never seem to get it in. It's a little primitive in my opinion. And while we're talking about flex, this case is not easy to lift. It is heavy, but the reason it's hard to lift is because there aren't many good places to grip it without smudging the glass. Additionally, there's no official 280mm radiator support on top, but it kind of works. And the case isn't the quietest thing ever, but I can hardly fault it for that considering it's to be expected of this type of design. There are some top cutouts that don't even look like they exist, which is aesthetically appealing, and appropriate rubber grommets on the sides, but this is lacking at the bottom of the motherboard tray and the basement. And speaking of cables and cutouts, I would have liked the cable channel in the back just to be a little bit wider. I built 2 different systems in this case, and both times I was convinced that fitting the case itself into my ex's skinny jeans would be easier. On the bright side, the channel itself has cutouts so you can get the proper connections to your hard drives easily. And speaking of the bright side, the Corsair branding only lights up in white, which is neutral, and I suppose it's nice, but I wish it had integration with the fan's lighting controller to match up. The lighting controller only works with the SP RGB fans, so if you replace them with the HD variants, it won't really do you any good. That basically leaves you with a controller built into the case that does nothing. Though I suppose you could hook up one of the buttons to your motherboard and use it as a reset switch. My last big issue, and probably the most devastating to me, is this half-assed power supply shroud. It's cool that they left space for push-pull configurations, but I would have liked a panel or something to cover up the cables that creep out through the front. By now, you may have noticed there are 2 different cases in my B-roll. The black one is the standard 570X, and the white one is a North America Newegg exclusive. From what I've been informed, it's not a limited run, so it should be around for a while. The white version addresses one issue that the original had. We've now been made whole with a basement grommet. Though it would have been nice to have a smaller cutout near the audio header. We also see a hole removed from the top, so our ghetto radiator mounting no longer works here. If it were up to me, I think I would have made these black pieces up top and in back white as well, but some of you may like that accent. I think I also would have preferred non-tinted windows in this case. But that's also subjective. Aside from that, I dare say the case speaks for itself. Build quality is what I've come to expect from Corsair, and the design is both classy and stylish, which is definitely something I prefer over edgy and aggressive. I'm kind of cheap, so I'll always be the first to pick at something for being too expensive, but I can't even do that here. $180 for this is $180 well spent. And so that's all I have to say about that. There's a comment section down below. Abuse it if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching. My name is Steven, and I am a little dim. Bye-bye. One of the top case trends of 2016 had, I think my mouth, like 512mm deep. I messed up my phrasing, but I said millimeters right. Yeah. And a robust steel frame. Robust. This is like those words I was talking about before, like boasts and posts and costs. Support for CPU coolers up to 170 millimeters tall. I can say millimeters all of a sudden. This is cool, because 3 of these fans, 360mm radiators, the rear exhaust, and the top officially supports a 240 rad radiator. I don't know which one I want to say. Cool. Why did I do that? The Kraken X62. You gotta be squidding me. I told myself to remove that from the script, and then I didn't, and then I forgot. And now I really want to get rid of it again, but I might keep it just because it sounds really bad. While cooling is a bit over the top, I don't expect any... The way I emphasized over made it kind of sound like it was a joke, but it wasn't. I sort of wanted to emphasize over so that it didn't sound like I was reusing the word top. I'll try that again. The toolless brackets have to be flexed to get into what? My ex was small. She was like this big maybe this big. I don't still have her skinny jeans. Stop asking questions. On the bright side, the channel itself... Did something just touch my butt? That was weird. We've now been made whole with a basement grommet. That was bad, but I'm proud of it anyway.